Hello and welcome. I'm Kriti Mehta and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. We'll start with a check of the top headlines this hour. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says he will meet Danish officials next week to discuss rising tensions over Greenland. This comes as Washington continues to show interest in acquiring the strategic Arctic territory. Venezuela's Interior Minister Diosdado Cabello says a U.S. military attack that captured Nicolas Maduro killed 100 people and wounded dozens. He called the attack on Venezuela terrible. U.S. President Donald Trump signs a memorandum ordering the U.S. to withdraw from 66 international organizations, saying they no longer serve American interests. The White House says the move targets dozens of UN and non-UN bodies. A U.S. immigration officer fatally shot a woman in Minneapolis, with the Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem saying the officer defensively shot to protect himself. The woman has been identified as 37-year-old Renee Nicole Good. Jordan and the European Union will hold their first ever bilateral summit in Amman, bringing together Jordanian King Abdullah with European Council President Antonio Costa and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. The landmark meeting builds on the January 2025 strategic and comprehensive partnership, which includes a €3 billion European Union assistance package. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese announced that Australia will launch a royal commission into the December 14 Bondi Beach mass shooting that killed 15 people amid intensified calls for tougher controls and stronger action against anti-Semitism. BRICS, now comprising 10 countries, is holding its first ever drill. It will begin tomorrow in South African waters under the theme of joint actions to ensure the safety of shipping and maritime economic activities. With reports saying Russia and Iran will participate, a move expected to raise concerns in Western capitals. According to Syrian media reports, Syrian Finance Minister Mohammed Yasser Barnier held talks with the Saudi Fund for Development delegation. The visit follows a January 6 meeting with Syrian Education Minister as Riyadh expands concessional financing for infrastructure and basic services in Syria. All right, viewers, let's start with the top focus here. There's some news coming in from the United States, where President Donald Trump has said that the U.S. could maintain oversight of Venezuela for much longer than a few months following the recent capture of President Nicolas Maduro. Now, Trump announced a plan to refine and sell up to 50 million barrels of Venezuelan oil, signaling coordination with the interim government led by Delcy Rodriguez. He claimed the move will lower oil prices and provide funds to Venezuela. The president stressed that U.S. officials are receiving everything they need from the interim authorities, while lawmakers have demanded a clear strategy and explanation of U.S. plans in the country. All right, I now request Professor Rohan Gunaratna, who's an international affairs expert, to join me in this discussion. Thank you, Professor Gunaratna, to join me in this discussion. He joins us from Singapore. Viewers, Professor, it's good to see you. Now, all of us have been closely monitoring the developments that are happening in Venezuela and the United States and the international reactions that are coming in. We had a statement earlier from Marco Rubio, who had said that the conditions are not conducive as of now to hold election. And now Trump is saying that the U.S. may be running Venezuela for a longer time than was expected. When do you think is an election likely?
It is very likely that there will be no election in the short term, Kriti. The reason is because United States wants to consolidate its influence in Venezuela. Venezuela drifted under the Chinese and the Russian and the Iranian orbit, and that is the main reason the United States intervened. Of course, there is an indictment against the Venezuelan president uh, that is filed, and the case is now being heard in New York courts. But what is important to understand is that Trump is following a doctrine called the Monroe Doctrine, that is in the Western Hemisphere. He doesn't want any state to come under Russian, Chinese, or Iranian, or any country that is inimical to US interests. So, South Central America and also other countries, including in Europe, Russia, the US will make sure that the Russians, Chinese, and the Iranians do not exert influence. That is Trump's strategy. He will not only he will intervene in other countries as well. He will not stop with Venezuela, the surgical extraction of Maduro from Venezuela to the US. He will intervene in other countries to ensure that US influence will spread to those countries.
Professor, do you see Venezuela fighting back the leadership that is there in the interim? Because, of course, the Supreme Court has gone on to have Rodriguez act as the interim president. The opposition leader Gonzalez has also voiced opposition to the US actions. Do you think there's going to be collaboration between the US and the interim leadership, or will there be significant resistance for Trump to go on carrying out the operation as he desires?
Trump's most recent statement released a few hours ago demonstrate that he has started to work with Rodriguez, the current acting president. So my personal view is that he will continue to do that. Venezuela has no capacity or capability to oppose the United States. US is a hyper superpower. Venezuela is currently not in a position to fight back.
All right, sure. And let's also talk about the other countries that Trump had threatened. We're talking about Colombia, Cuba, Mexico, Iran. Do you think all of them put together, will they be able to fight back, or are they capable, or to put a fight against the US aggression?
The Colombian leader has threatened Trump. He has said that, well, come and take me. So I think that these statements will unnecessarily provoke Trump. One must understand that leaders must take a small lesson how to deal with Trump. So if we are not able to do that, then of course Trump will retaliate, because this is his style of leadership. He is not a conventional leader. He will fight them back. So what is important is not to provoke Trump, but to work with Trump. There is no other option.
Yeah, but what do you think is really needed to tame this bully? Because, I mean, we all understand there's hegemony that the US is exercising, but what Trump is doing is clear bullying.
But I would also like to say something else. I read the indictment of Maduro, and it is dated 2020. And he himself, the former Venezuelan president himself, is implicated in the flow of narcotics from Venezuela to the United States. What happened was the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, that is called FARC, and this group had a peace agreement with Colombia, and they moved their infrastructure to Venezuela. And the main allegation of the United States is that Maduro did not detect, disrupt, and dismantle the cocaine infrastructure on Venezuelan soil. So what is important at this point is for countries from Canada to Latin America to other countries in that region and beyond to work with Trump in a way where Trump will not take such drastic action.
All right, sure. Well, thanks for your comments, Professor, but requested to stay on with me as we proceed. Viewers, now the European Union has also expressed regret over the US's decision to withdraw from a key United Nations climate treaty. European Union climate chief Wopke Hoekstra has described the US move as a setback for international climate action. The latest withdrawal follows a presidential memorandum signed by US President Donald Trump that directs the US to pull out from more than 66 international organizations and treaties, including the UN Climate Framework and its Scientific Assessment Panel. Experts say the move effectively removes the US, which happens to be the world's largest historical emitter, from its commitments to financial support to developing countries for clean energy transitions and adaptation programs. Despite the US decision, the European Union said it would continue engaging with global partners to advance climate goals. I request Professor Gunaratna to join me back in this discussion and start with his comments.
So the US is a massive contributor of financial resources to international organizations, especially to the United Nations. And now Trump has made a key decision, that is, US federal agencies are to halt participation in and funding 31 UN bodies and 35 non-UN organizations. So this is a major blow to the international system and to the UN, because the US is isolating itself, withdrawing from those organizations. So I believe that what is important is that for governments around the world and the international community to understand why the US is doing that and to engage, to re-engage the US. The move is meant from a US perspective to save the taxpayer money, reduce US funding for groups that criticize American policies, and make sure that US is not limited by international rules and focus more money on domestic priorities like infrastructure, military, and the border security. So I think that there needs to be a serious dialogue by the US partners with Washington DC, so that they will be able to engage the US in a very positive way. Because if the US withdraws, then of course UN and other international organizations will be depleted of resources and funds. Not only that, but also US participation, if there's no US participation in those organizations, they will find it very difficult to build rules and regulations and systems globally. So the world is heading to a very difficult era of challenges, because we all have to rely on the international system, from aviation to maritime to land transportation to communication to so many things. So I think that this will impact very negatively on the global community unless the brightest and the best leaders of the world come together and work with Trump.
Yeah. But Professor, do you foresee the US changing its stance once Trump completes his term, if he does, and demits office? Because we had the Biden administration that was very pro-climate action. And Trump, of course, does not believe in that. When Trump is out of office, do you think it's likely for the US to have a leader that actually cares for things that concern the global environment?
Certainly the US will rejoin, because many Americans and many US leaders believe that they must contribute to the stability and security of climate and the environment. But this is Trump's wish. He doesn't believe that there's a threat to the climate. So I believe that the next few years, the US will not participate actively in advancing the aims and the objectives of other countries in protecting and preserving climate.
All right. Well, we hope that changes. But for now, thank you very much, Professor, for joining me in this discussion. It's a pleasure to speak with you. Moving ahead now, viewers. Tensions in Yemen have escalated following the dramatic escape of southern separatist leader Idrus al-Zubaydi. Today, the forces from his southern transitional council were seen manning checkpoints in parts of Aden. Saudi Arabia claims Zubaydi fled Yemen by boat before boarding a flight to Mogadishu and then arriving in Abu Dhabi. The situation has heightened the rift between Saudi Arabia and the UAE, fracturing their coalition in Yemen. The separatists' rapid advance in the south has further complicated the already volatile conflict with the Iran-backed Houthis. Now, joining me in this discussion is Dr. Satoru Nagao, who is a fellow at the Hudson Institute of Tokyo. Well, thanks very much, Dr. Nagao, for joining me in this discussion. What do you see is the fourth, is going to be up next? The leaders being held. Is a dialogue now likely? Because up until now, he's been, of course, avoiding to hold a negotiation. But with him captured now, what's your foresight of what's going to be next?
Yeah, it is interesting. If the group is strong, STC is strong enough, in this case, leader do not need to escape. So that's why if the leader leaves their country and leads the UAE, which is supporting STC, this means that this group faces a very difficulty because of the military intervention of the Saudi Arabia. So that's why even if he leads the UAE, there's a possibility that they need to negotiate with the Saudi Arabia, I think, and the government in Yemen. So that's why in this case, militarily, the Saudi side has some advantage, I guess. But at the same time, indeed, Saudi has already suggested ceasefire negotiation with STC. So that's why that time Mr. Zubaydi did not join this. So why he did not join is the matter. Maybe now, if he need to leave, maybe there is a possibility that they decide, and Saudi side and the government of Yemen side is maybe are seeking something, the chance to negotiate, I wish. And because between the Saudi and the UAE, there's a possibility they can find something safe place to negotiate. In the Yemen, of course, because this is war zone, it is not easy. And if they need to visit one country of the one side, of course, they worry about safety. So that's why more neutral places, safe places needed to negotiate, I think. So that's why if the STC's leader reaches UAE, what kind of negotiation table was set between the Saudi and the UAE or the Yemen government and the STC? Well, that is the interesting point, I think.
And what do you think about the UAE-Saudi relations going from here?
Originally, the Saudi and UAE was close and good allies. But now, because of the situation in Yemen, they fought each other indirectly, and it has expanded battle in the Sudan also. So relation has deteriorated. So, but view from Sunni Arabs, many countries wish Saudi and the UAE to be the cordial good relations, because Sunni Arabs divided is not good news when they face Sea Arab or the problem in the Middle East. So, and originally they are right. So that's why if the negotiation table is set, so of course this is welcome news. But in this case, Saudi's attitude is not, I believe, because Saudi is winning, and winning means that they have the initiative to decide something.
All right, sure. Thanks for your comments there, Dr. Nagao. Requested to stay on with me once again. Viewers, there's some news now coming in from China that has announced that its ban on exporting dual-use items to Japan for military purposes will not affect civilian trade calling the move legitimate and reasonable. Dual-use items include goods, software and technologies that serve both civilian and military purposes, such as rare earth elements critical for drones and chips. The ban comes amid rising tensions after Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi said a Chinese attack on Taiwan could threaten Japan's security. Beijing has demanded a retraction, which Takaichi has refused, prompting China to implement countermeasures against Japanese military-related imports. Let's first listen into that statement, and then we'll have a discussion on that with Dr. Nagao.
依法依规，针对所有两用物项，禁止对日本军事用户、军事用途以及一切参与提升日本军事实力的其他最终用户用途出口。其目的是制止在军事化和拥核企图，完全正当、合理、合法。中方始终致力于维护全球产供链的稳定与安全。涉及民事用途的，不会因此受到影响。对于开展正常民用贸易往来的相关方，完全没有必要担心。
All right, let's have Dr. Nagao join us back in the discussion here. Dr. Nagao, do you think China's statements can be taken on face value? When it says that it will not allow dual use, how will the civilian population not be affected?
China hasn't published which products, which parts, which materials are target of their sanctions. So that's why so far Japan side cannot identify the impact of this new restriction. But at the same time, if China restricts export to Japan, of course, because this is a trade, China cannot get the money. So that's why this is a mutual damage restriction. So that's why when China imposed the sanction or restriction in this case, of course, China think the careful manner to avoid the damage on China side. So that's why this is still one of the cards of the negotiation China is using. But anyway, what China want to get is information, I believe, because China is testing President Takaichi's government. And in this case, as a supporter of the Takaichi government, the business circle in Japan is important. So China imposed sanction or the pressure to this business circle to make pressure to the Takaichi government. So this is indirect sanction, indirect pressure. And which sector or which material is the weak point of Japan, weak point of the Takaichi administration is very important diplomatic card China has. So that's why one by one China set up and restrict and impose sanction against Japan and identify which one is most important and most persuasive for the Takaichi administration. These are very important for China to use in the long run, and one by one they will test it, I think. But anyway, this year, last year exactly, nearly 5% of the Japanese has already left from China, and since 2012, 1/3 of Japanese has already left from China. So this is a long-term process between Japan and China as a decoupling. So that's why completely decouple, it is not easy to happen. But process of the decoupling is still ongoing and continuing. That is true. Okay. So in the long run, Japan and China is a different economic circle, and they are preparing to fight.
All
that
right.
is one kind of the Cold War in the Northeast Asia.
All right, we'll watch out how those developments go from here. But thanks very much, Dr. Nagao, for your assessment. And moving ahead, viewers, as always, let's end this bulletin with some technology news that's coming in. Now, at the 2026 Consumer Electronics Show, Lava Tech brands have debuted a new candy called Lollipop Star, seeking to reinvent snacking with cutting-edge technology. This product reimagines candy as an audio interface, embedding bone conduction technology into a lollipop stick to deliver music directly through the teeth and jaw. The company behind this innovation, Lava Tech, is a consumer electronics company. The product itself will be marketed as a low-commitment purchase rather than an item for life, with every lollipop stick coming with a unique flavor, song, and aesthetic. Listen in to how consumers are reacting to this product at the CES show in Las Vegas.
Put it in your mouth and close your ears, where you can actually hear music. I'm like, no way, no. I'm like, it is music. So I can see my great nephews and nieces actually getting involved in something like this. And it was like, here I am, 66 years old, and enjoying something like this. It's amazing, bro. It's amazing.
You put it in your mouth and then you hear music, but you're also like eating a lollipop. And it's like, how are these two different senses happening at the same time? Am I going to taste music? Am I going to hear lollipop? Like, what's going on right now? It's just insane.
I think that this will be a great product for kids, you know, for this kids party, that you give another things like a piñata stuff inside, so you can put this right inside and the kids is going to love it because they're going to hear music, and maybe you can even take it off of the iPads or any tablet, you know, the digital devices. They can play with this in the real world with this kind of technology, and besides, it's delicious.
All right, that's all we have time for. Thanks for watching NewsX World. For all international news and updates.